Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday night or Friday morning if you're watching this from Australia or New Zealand or somewhere thereabout. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining me tonight. And I will just give it a minute or two before I get started. I want to give people time to tune in, of course. We don't want anyone missing any of the good stuff. Ah, so there's Mary. Hey, Mary. I know I have lots of old friends watching and hopefully some new friends watching, maybe some new fans and followers. So, yeah, I'm starting to see some names I recognize. Hello, everybody. Okay, well, I'm not going to wait too long. Let's just get into business. I'm going to share my screen, and as always when I do this, we will hope that the tech gods are with us and everything will work well and you will be able to see the slides. Let's see. Where is my share screen? 1 second. Sorry. There we are. Wait a minute. Sorry about that. There we go. Share screen. I want to share my slideshow. Okay. There we go. Whew, see, great at nutrition, less great at the technology, but the nutrition is more important, isn't it? So this workshop is the secrets to breaking keto fat loss stalls. And who doesn't need help with that? And frankly, even if you don't need help with the stall, I hope not everyone watching is in that situation, because I think I'm going to present some information that is going to be helpful even if you're not in a stall. So this is part one. Part two will be airing on Monday, May 23rd, but I'll tell you about that at the end. This is part one. Is the word keto sabotaging your fat loss? We call it the K word. How many people out there recognize that butter coffee, that big load of fat being dropped into the coffee? We'll come back to that. This is part one. Is the word keto sabotaging your fat loss? You might be wondering, no, I'm on a keto diet. I'm on a ketogenic diet. How could the word keto possibly be standing in my way? Let's find out. All right, just a quick disclaimer. I am a nutritionist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. So the information here is just that. It's information. We're not diagnosing or treating or curing or preventing any diseases with this little slideshow, right? Now, I think most of you watching probably know who I am, but in case any of you are new, and if you are, hello, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Amy Berger. I am a low carb and keto oriented nutritionist and a writer. So I am the author or co-author of 3 books, and I've got a 4th in the works. My first book is The Alzheimer's Antidote, which is about using a low carb or keto diet for Alzheimer's, which you may or may not know, they actually call type 3 diabetes or diabetes of the brain. If you're wondering why anyone would consider using a low carb or ketogenic diet for that issue. My second book is The Stall Slayer, which is all about breaking fat loss stalls on low carb and keto diets. And my third book, End Your Carb Confusion, well, not my book, co-written with Dr. Eric Westman, the co-founder of Adapter Life Academy. And I meant to grab the award. It's sitting over there. We just won top keto book at the Metabolic Health Summit for End Your Carb Confusion. So what a huge honor to have won that. And I am the lead nutritionist of Adapter Life Academy. And my motto is keto without the crazy. I love keto. I love low carb, but I love helping people see how to do this simply and sanely and with less complication and less overwhelm than they're typically doing it out there without help. So now that all that is done, more so than any of that, more so than being a nutritionist, more so than being a writer who's written books about keto, I am one of you. I have struggled with my own weight. I've battled the bulge, for lack of a better phrase. I have, there is my picture from 2001. I was about 50 yards away from the finish line of the Pittsburgh Marathon. And you can see I wasn't obese in that picture, but I was a little chubby, especially considering I had just spent the previous 5 or 6 months running, training for a marathon. So I know what it's like to fight weight. And there I am in a much more recent picture on my happy, yummy, delicious keto diet. So who out there is totally overwhelmed by the keto stuff? Who is drowning in the ocean of information, or being inundated with the avalanche, being buried in the snow avalanche of keto, right? You got to worry about macros, tracking, you've got to fast. What about all these abbreviations and acronyms, the GKI, the glucose ketone index? Can I have seed oils? Is my ranch dressing going to kill me? What about, apps and spreadsheets? I have to record everything. MCT oil, LCHF, again, these letters, these abbreviations, OMAD, 1 meal a day, protein sparing modified. It's enough to make you want to give up before you even start, right? It's enough to, oh my goodness, if I have to I just want to eat. I just want to eat food and get healthy and enjoy my life and maybe lose a few pounds along the way if I can. Is that too much to ask, right? When you're out there with all this stuff, it is very overwhelming. So, keto without the crazy. Let's get back to the basics. Let's simplify. Let's get back to center. What is ketosis even? Like, most of you, I imagine, if you're tuning in, you're either already following a ketogenic or low carb diet, or you're thinking about it. So you probably know what ketosis is, but honestly, some of you might not. You're just doing this diet. You got a plan, you got a program, you got a food list from somewhere, and you're doing it. Maybe you don't even know what ketosis actually is. So let's start there. Ketosis is a metabolic state where your fat is your body's predominant fuel source. And it happens when dietary carbohydrate is in very, very low supply, or they're totally absent, you're just not eating any carbs. Your body shifts to burning fat. And the way this happens is, under most, quote unquote, normal circumstances, carbohydrate or glucose is your body's primary fuel, the primary energy source that your body, all your cells and tissues use to power the stuff they have to do. And when your carbohydrate intake is very, very low, your body's not just going to shut down. You're not just going to die and collapse on the floor. Your body's going to say, there's hardly any carbohydrate coming in. I better find a different fuel. I better start getting energy from somewhere else. Oh, look at all this gorgeous fat I have all over the place. Look at all this yummy fat in my food. I'll just burn that instead. Great. So keeping your carbohydrate intake very, very low shifts your body to burning more fat instead. And when you are burning fat, ketones are generated as byproducts of breaking down fat. They don't just happen magically. They're not just independent. They come as sort of a secondary thing when you are metabolizing fat. And here's something that's really important to know. Ketones are a secondary fuel. They are not the main fuel, right? When you are on a very low carb or ketogenic diet, look at the top bullet there. Your body's predominant fuel is fat. It's not ketones. So we'll talk about this more in a little bit, but keep this in mind. If you're ever feeling, if you happen to be someone who measures your ketones, if you're ever feeling worried, if your ketone level is kind of low, or you think you're doing something wrong, ketones are not your predominant fuel source anyway. So we may not have to kind of be concerned too much with what our ketone level is. Now, all that being said, we use the term ketogenic diet because your body generates ketones, even if just at a tiny, tiny level. That's what we call it, a ketogenic diet. But one of the most important things I can tell you, and again, none of this has anything to do with being in a stall yet, right? This is all just good, helpful information for keto. You can absolutely be burning fat, metabolizing fat, and losing body fat, even if you are not in ketosis. And when I say not in ketosis, I mean, if you were to measure your ketones, whether you test the urine, you test blood, or you measure the breath ketones, even if your level is very low or not even registering at all, that doesn't mean you are not burning fat. And I'll tell you why. Ketones come from, remember I said they're a byproduct of breaking down fat. When you start metabolizing and burning fat for fuel, you will generate a little bit of ketones as part of that process. Anytime you ever look this up in a biochemistry textbook, this is how they explain ketones. They come from the incomplete oxidation of fatty acids. Great, Amy. What does that mean in plain English, please? Like, hello. Yeah. Oxidation just means the burning, or, that's just the burning of fat. Fatty acid is the fancy scientific name for what we would think of as fat. And ketones come from the incomplete breakdown or burning of fat. And I have this very complicated diagram that I made a long time ago for a blog post. I'm going to bring it up. It's going to be very intimidating. So I'm just going to walk you through one quick piece of it. The end product of when we break down fat, they're broken down, they're chopped up into little pieces. And each of these little pieces gets put into a certain biochemical cycle. And this cycle has a lot of other steps along the way. And in order for the cycle to keep going, we have to have enough of each of those other things at every step. When there's not enough of some of those things, then all the fat, all those little chopped up pieces of fat cannot go into the cycle because there's not enough of the other stuff to keep the cycle running. In that situation, instead of all of that fat being sent through the cycle, some of it is shunted off to be made into ketones. So when you're burning the fat and some of the fat is going into the cycle, some of it, the extra, if there's not enough, some of it gets made into ketones. But what if you do completely oxidize the fatty acid? What if you chop up all the fat and there is enough of everything to keep the cycle going and going and going, so all of those little pieces of fat can go into that cycle? If that's happening, you are not going to have any left over to be made into ketones, but you are still burning the fat in that other cycle. You are this is why I said you can burn fat, be metabolizing fat and losing body fat, even if you don't have a high level of ketones when you go to measure, because all of the fat you're burning is being put into the cycle. Those of you who remember crazy high school or college chemistry, biochemistry, on the right-hand side there, you're looking at the Krebs cycle. And if you look at the top left, the second purple box, it says acetyl-CoA. And there's not going to be a quiz on this, I promise. Don't worry if you don't get it. The main point you have to understand is you chop up these little fats and you get these pieces of acetyl-CoA from fatty acids or fats. They go into that cycle. And if there's not, see that red dashed line? If there's not enough stuff to keep the cycle going, then it goes back out and it gets made into ketones. You see in the yellow boxes, acetoacetate, that's the one, if you measure urine, you're measuring acetoacetate, which is a ketone. Acetoacetate can get converted into acetone, which is the one you measure if you ever test breath ketones. And if you ever measure blood ketones, you are looking at beta hydroxybutyrate. They're all ketones. Again, the horse is dead. I'm just going to beat it one last time. You can be burning fat all in that cycle, even if you are not putting a whole lot outside to make ketones. So we don't really have to worry about your ketone level. Now, with all that in mind, what's wrong with the word keto, right? This presentation is called, is the word keto sabotaging your fat loss? You're on a ketogenic diet. What is the problem with the word keto, or I should say the shorthand keto? Well, I just kind of walked you through some of it, right? It puts emphasis on being in ketosis or having a certain ketone level, because you might think, again, you're doing something wrong or it's not working if you don't have a certain level of ketone. Or if you're just not in ketosis at all, you might think, well, I'm not going to lose weight. What am I doing? And so it just puts the emphasis on the wrong thing. You might think that you have to measure your ketones. Now, those of you who enjoy measuring because you just like to see the data, or you kind of want to confirm that you're in ketosis for whatever reason, it's fine. That's fine to measure, but you don't have to. So if you want to save your money for good food, or new clothes when all the pounds start to go away and you need to replace some wardrobe items, I would rather you spend your money on that than all the meters and the test strips and the gadgets. But you can measure if you want to, you just don't have to. You might think you have to eat or drink specific things in order to be keto or be more keto. This is definitely not the case. A lot of people get into trouble when, if I remember I showed that buttery coffee. If your carbohydrate intake is very low and you increase fat, if you do load up a cup of coffee or tea with butter or coconut oil or MCT oil, you will have higher ketones. Most people will. Or you let's see, I don't know if I have fat macro on here or not. Let's see. You could end up doing things that are counterproductive if you're adding gobs and gobs of extra fat because you think that's what it is to be keto. Well, it has to have a certain percentage of fat, or whatever I'm eating or drinking, I have to add more fat to make it more keto. This is, again, you're sort of chasing the ketones. You're focused on keto rather than focused on fat loss or keeping your carbs low. So and what's the problem with worrying about your ketone level? I wish that having higher ketones made you lose more weight or made you lose it more quickly. Because if that was the case, Amy Berger would have her own branded MCT oil and her own branded special 2-It Nutrition keto without the crazy exogenous ketones. Because if all it took to help you lose more weight or lose it more quickly was getting you to a higher ketone level, then I could sell you plenty of stuff that will help you do that. But that is not how this works. It's just not true that having a higher ketone level causes you to lose more weight or lose weight more quickly. So this is another reason why you don't really have to worry about where your ketone level is or measure at all. I have several friends who have lost over 100 pounds, one of them over 200 pounds, who either never measured at all, or if they did measure, they were very, very rarely in ketosis. And clearly that didn't stop them from losing a very substantial amount of weight. So a little bit more the lowdown on keto. And if you're wondering what the pile of money is doing there on the picture, we'll get to that. That's a reminder for me. Keto is a fat burning diet, right? Remember I said, when your carbohydrate intake is really, really low, so it's not enough to power your body will switch over to burning fat instead. So keto is a fat burning diet. But burning fat is not the same as losing fat. I cannot emphasize this enough. Just because you are metabolizing fat doesn't mean that you are going to lose stored body fat from your frame. So if you follow Adapt Your Life and you follow Dr. Eric Westman, he often uses the phrase fat burning machine. Keto turns you into a fat burning machine. Yes, it does. But being a fat burning machine doesn't mean that you are a fat losing machine. If you're confused right now, don't worry, I'm going to clarify. Remember, keto shifts your body from running on all those carbs to running mostly on fat. Great. If we want to burn fat and we want to lose fat, or kind of said that backwards, if you want to lose fat, The first step is you have to burn fat, right? You're never going to lose fat if you're constantly burning glucose, you're constantly burning carbs, right? That there is kind of the whole rationale for a ketogenic diet for the purpose of fat loss. You cannot burn body fat and lose body fat if you're too busy burning carbs. Get rid of the carbs, now we can burn fat. But just because we're burning fat doesn't mean we're losing fat. So the money thing, the analogy, because I know like giving you sort of comparisons sometimes helps us remember, and it just kind of helps things make more sense. Think about your salary, your income, whatever you do for a living, you have an income. Just because you are making money, just because you have a paycheck, you have an income, you have a salary, doesn't mean that your savings account is growing bigger, right? Doesn't mean your investments are getting richer, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't mean they're growing, right? You have money coming in. Well, why isn't my savings growing? Well, because there's steps in between, right? Just because you have money coming in doesn't mean your actual savings or investments are growing. Same thing, like there's actions you have to take in between to make that happen. Just like, okay, now I'm burning fat, great. That doesn't automatically mean I'm going to lose body fat. There's a couple of steps in between. I hope that kind of makes sense a little bit. So I said keto is a fat burning diet. Just because you're burning fat doesn't mean you can have an unlimited amount of fat in your food. Why? Because you can burn all this delicious, delightful stored body fat, or you can burn the fat from your food. So, okay, the lack of carbohydrate helps us burn fat. But now my body has a choice of burning the stored fat or burning the butter in my coffee and the 3 pounds of cheese I'm eating every day and the bag of almonds I'm eating every day and all the other nuts and nut butters and all the other stuff, the mayo, the heavy cream, the all that stuff. So you can actually gain fat in ketosis. Ask me how I know. Those of you who have followed me for a while probably saw this coming. You can gain fat even if you are in ketosis, because let's say how do I put this? You're burning, your body is in a fat burning state, but if you're overdoing the dietary fat, your body is too busy breaking down and burning all of that, the butter, the mayo, the cream, the cheese, the oils. Why would your body bother turning to all this sort of stored fat that's just put away for a rainy day when it's got all this fat coming in from the food? Which one do you think it's going to go to first? Now, it's not that you need to go low fat. Keto is still a yummy fat diet. You don't have to avoid fat, but you can't overdo it. You can't have an unlimited amount and expect your body to have any reason to turn toward all the stored fat instead. So those of you that follow me, me and my little mayonnaise problem. I cannot have mayonnaise in my house because I will eat half a jar of mayonnaise in a sitting. And guess what? If I'm in a very, very low carbohydrate state, then I'll be in ketosis. So I'm eating all that mayo. It's basically 100% fat. If I were to measure my urine ketones, they will be darker purple than the slide you're looking at, but I will not be losing body fat. My body is way too busy burning all the mayonnaise. It can't be bothered to burn my love handles and my hips and all that. So that's some of the confusion, when people are stuck in a fat loss stall, and I'll talk about this in part 2. That's one of the simplest things to change that has a huge kind of outsized impact. It's a very small thing that has a very large impact for the better, like sort of just cutting back on some of those fats, maybe even eliminating nuts, eliminating cheese, or just making sure that you're really careful with the portions, not going over the stuff like the mayo, the cream cheese, and all that. So that's a big deal. What else is problematic with the word keto? Well, when I was new to this, like almost 20 years ago, none of this keto stuff existed. It's really a blessing and a curse that all this stuff exists now. The keto cereal, we've got keto granola, we've got keto chocolate, we've got these chocolate bars with stevia. And it's good and bad that these things exist, right? The fact that these exist tell us that keto has so exploded in popularity that even mainstream sort of like mass market companies are making keto versions of their cereal, their bread, their chocolate, whatever. That's great. But, and some people can have those products in their diet and still get the results they want, get where they want to go. A lot of us can't. A lot of us, many of you are sort of keto veterans. You've been doing this a while, so you kind of know the lay of the land. You know that those aren't really that conducive to you getting where you want to go. But for people who are new, they might be thinking, I don't know why I'm not losing any weight. I'm eating my keto cereal. I'm eating my keto brownies. I'm snacking on keto granola. I'm having a keto cookie at night. Like my keto ice cream on the weekends. Why isn't keto working? Those of us who've been at this a while know why it's not working. So focusing on keto, you might sort of automatically think that anything labeled keto is safe for you to eat, is like gonna be conducive to helping you. It's not. Just because the label says keto doesn't mean it's going to help you. Again, I wish it would. I wish it was the case, because then I'd be the first one in the car on my way to the store to get the keto ice cream, but it's, unfortunately, those products are not really our friends. And again, I really want to be clear. Some people can have that either on a regular basis as a normal part of their diet, or once in a while as a little treat, and they do fine. Many of us can't, especially if fat loss is already difficult, right? If we're already having to work really hard and it's already like, it just seems so, it's such a bigger fight, such a bigger battle for us than it is for other people. We cannot necessarily get away with what other people are doing. So you will lose some weight. These keto products will absolutely help you lose weight from your wallet. I forget, I don't remember if it was Dr. Rob Sivis or somebody, some other keto professional called it a wallet biopsy. So save your money, or don't save it, spend your money on real food. Spend your money on the OG keto foods. You know what the real keto foods are? Stuff like this. Meat, and when I say meat, I just mean animal protein. So it could be beef, pork, bison, lamb, poultry, seafood, game meats. We've got eggs, non-starchy vegetables, high fat, low sugar dairy products to your tolerance. This is not an austere diet. This is not a hardship diet. I mean, this is a really delicious way to eat, I think. But this is keto food. If it says keto, I can't say the more it says keto, but if it says keto on the label, the less likely it is to actually be conducive to you getting the results you want with the ketogenic diet. So I have always preferred the phrase low carb. And like I said, when I was new to this, nobody called it keto. I started with the Atkins diet. Everybody called it low carb, because back then there was no emphasis on being in ketosis. Dr. Atkins talked about measuring the urine ketones, but it was not really a big deal. You could measure, but you didn't have to. And here is why I prefer to use the phrase low carb. So the arrow, like Shift your mindset from thinking of ketosis, I have to be in ketosis. It's not keto if it doesn't have a ton of fat. Like, I need to add more fat to make it keto. Shift from there to the direction of low carb, because low carb puts the emphasis where the emphasis belongs, on the very low carbohydrate intake. Remember this, I know I've said this a few times already, but I can't emphasize it enough because it really blows people's minds, especially if you're new to this, or maybe even if you're not new and you just need a refresher. What makes a diet ketogenic, or what helps you burn fat, is not adding more and more and more fat. It's not having the carbohydrate, right? What prompts your body to shift over to fueling on fat is the fact that there's not enough carbohydrate to use instead. So forget keto, forget high fat, and focus on the very low carb. I think I just said this like 4 other ways. If you want to burn fat, then keeping your carbohydrate intake low, and I would say for most of us very low, is more important than having high ketones. There's no such thing as magical macros or magical math. Just keep the carbs low. Again, I wish keto did work by magical macros, magical macro math, whatever you want to call it. Because if it did, I could spit numbers at you, eat this much fat, this much protein, this much carbs, see it in 6 months and 50 pounds lighter. I wish. Now, I'd be out of a job if it were that easy, right? Or maybe people would just come to me and like I could give them macros, but you know what I mean? And I have friends who dabble in macros, and it's not a bad thing, but there's no magical math that's going to make all of the pieces fit together magically where fat just melts off of you. And especially with I didn't do fat macro. I thought I had a bullet that said something about a fat macro. You do not have to do anything about hitting your fat macro. This is where people get into trouble when they're adding all that extra fat in order to get to some percentage or ratio. It doesn't work that way. And so if you've been doing that and you're not getting where you want to go, that might be an issue for you. So I wasn't planning on taking any questions today, but tune in for part 2 on Monday, same time, 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to talk about the 3 biggest reasons you're stalling on keto. So I'll talk a little more about all this fat macro stuff. I'll talk about some other dietary stuff, and there's some lifestyle stuff in there too. So tune in Monday. If you have questions, save them for Monday and be sure to tune in, because I will save time for questions on Monday. And in the meantime, visit our website at adaptyourlifeacademy.com, adaptyourlifeacademy.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. Don't get me wrong. I like the word ketogenic. I like the phrase ketogenic diet. I even like saying keto because it's easier than saying low carb, but it can be misleading, and it can get us into trouble when we're so focused on a ketone level or being in ketosis or that wackadoodle math that we've all heard about. It takes focus away from the thing that really is what's most important, which is just having a very, very low carbohydrate intake. So I think that helps me stop sharing my screen. Okay. All right, I'm going to call it a night, but tune in Monday and I will see you then. You can watch wherever you're watching now. If you're watching on a certain Facebook group or a YouTube channel, we will be same time, same place, Monday the 23rd. Go enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks, everybody.